Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the show for leaders who want real results, not more noise. Join Emmanuel Rose as he helps business builders turn AI from a confusing add-on into a practical advantage with clearer messaging, stronger trust, and smarter systems. If you felt the shift happening in real time, you're not imagining it. In the agentic pivot, Emmanuel calls it the move from experimenting with AI to building with it, so it supports your team, your brand, and your growth. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI. I'm Emmanuel Rose, and today I'm joined by Mike Toguchi, Chief Strategy Officer at Tectonic, formerly eResources. Mike has spent more than 25 years helping universities, nonprofits, foundations, and associations simplify complex digital workflows across scholarships, grants, admissions, accessibility service, and compliance-driven processes. His work supports organizations including Stanford, UC Davis, PG&E, and Google's Certified Innovator Program. Mike brings a practical view of how technology can reduce manual work, improve decision-making, and help mission-driven systems spend less time managing systems and creating impact. Mike, thanks so much for taking some time here with me today.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
It's good stuff. I'm curious. You spent a few decades helping mission-driven organizations. What are some of the more common operational bottlenecks you see before an organization is ready to automate or adopt AI?
Well, there's a lot of broken workflows and a lot of siloed departments. Those are one of the biggest challenges. The two biggest challenges I think we see. Groups are, they may be efficient and effective, like a marketing team or a sales team or a comms team in a vacuum, but they're not really collaborating. They're not really integrated. And so it's sometimes difficult to, apply AI in that world where they're used to operating by themselves. And just overall, like having inefficient workflows, sort of broken processes. You can't staple AI, any solution on top of it to solve it. It really is more just going to expose some of those fissures. And so those are really the two things that we see most like from nonprofits, from associations, member organizations. And so we try and, kind of nip that in the bud and not start with the technology, but start with the identifying the process and trying to make sure that any corrective action is taken on the workflow.
Yeah. So when I hear you say that, I'm thinking standard operating procedure, SOPs, and is anything even written down, or is it all just in somebody's head and in their email inbox? And is that kind of what you're seeing?
Yeah, it absolutely that. And there are a lot of high functioning folks that operate that way. But that's not a good, given where we're at, that's not a good way to operate any further. You need to be, have greater documentation. You need to be able to easily onboard things. There needs to be digestible information that, an LLM can take in. You can't build an agent if they're trying to just scan through, 10 years worth of email. And so having those procedures are important. They help build a more cohesive team. They help you onboard. Staffing is so in flux. People are, being laid off, being hired, and, kind of going up and down. You've got to have those SOPs in place in order to manage that risk.
Yeah, I hear you. Is there a tool that you use to help people get the SOPs written down and shared?
I don't know that there's a specific tool, but we definitely have a methodology that we share with folks, just in terms of it's almost like a turbocharged version of discovery, where you're trying to really identify the stakeholders at each layer, working with leadership so that they are explaining, kind of where they're headed with pieces. We do utilize, both software platforms as well as AI to, sort of accelerate the process of creating something. And a lot of groups will find that it's hard to put pen to paper on what the process is. And it's not just, as you mentioned, people that have everything stuck in their head. Sometimes there's customizations in their workflow that were added in years before by people who aren't even at the organization anymore.
For sure.
But and so you ask, why is this way? And they say, well, we don't know. It has always been that way. And so the organizations that tackle those problems are the ones that are going to thrive more when they are actually utilizing AI, because they've uncovered those things.
Interesting. Talk to me a little bit about the the clients that you've had recently that have been high functioning in terms of really committed, and what those projects look like.
Yeah, I mean, some of them, from a nonprofit standpoint, we have some folks that are really, they're obviously constantly looking for funding, dealing with grants, and they've found ways to better search out opportunities, to, summarize information, figure out where the best opportunities are for them, to create their actual grant applications, which has always a bit of a bear. And so they're finding ways to do that. And then also when they're doing their individual fundraising from their donors, they're searching through LinkedIn profiles, sending, having generatively creating individualized emails, targeting people based on data that consistent validated data that they have that show, well, this person has given, last year, but, not 2 years ago, or this person has, so they're really embracing, both the data and the ability to, sort of quickly accelerate what they do. So they're doing a lot less research and sort of manual emailing. A lot of the low level things are taken out of the equation that way. And so they're more productive. We're also seeing from the university level, like we work with a lot of disability centers, and they have a great deal of, governance and regulations and other things that they have to be mindful of as it relates to data. But, they give the students a better experience by utilizing tools to speed up the process. So, oftentimes you might in school deal with a bureaucracy. If you can reduce that time, serve a student faster and better, have a specialist know exactly what the problem is, understand the research for it. It really, the student at this point is a customer in higher ed. And so it's very critical for schools to provide a good service so that they stay there. So those are some examples of the high functioning, and obviously, there are others that are more challenged.
Oh yeah, no, I mean there's the whole range, and I'm still talking to mid-sized business owners who are like, we're not really going to do anything with AI yet. They're still still holding on to this dream that they don't have to participate in this change.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, there are days when it feels like things are kind of the same, but I think, those are the folks that are going to wake up in 24 months, 36 months and not have a business because they will have fallen too far behind. There's this window or grace period that people are working within where a lot of things are still kind of running the way they used to.
Yeah, and it's true, and I would say there's no reason to be on the bleeding edge of things. We don't need to be there, but you definitely need to be like you're talking about, having a plan for helping people identify kind of what their daily work life is, and capturing that information, and then looking to automate it, the very minimal, and then use the tools of custom GPTs or projects inside of Claude to speed up individual executives' workday.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think bleeding edge is a way for, with some rare exceptions, it's a way to drive yourself nuts. You'll never keep up. Things change too quickly. But our mantra, even before AI was mainstream, was, how can you reduce manual processes, automate things so that people have time for real work, productive work, impactful work. And that's what we're really talking about, is trying to find ways to identify, challenges where you say, hey, did you spend, 2 hours just working in one spreadsheet and then, kind of messing around with it, or, copying and pasting things, or writing low level, letters to people. Those are the kinds of things that you can save 10-20% of your day and can have a huge impact, regardless of, it doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit or business owner or university. So
Yeah, I even I really try to encourage people as AI first in that, right? And for example, I'm working on an outbound project where I had a list of like 2,000 names, all these various titles, and I needed to pull extract just two sets of titles essentially, um, to put that paste that into Claude, make a request. It builds a spreadsheet for me. That's a summary spreadsheet that then I can push into the next thing because they're not connected yet. But it's something that would have taken me 2 or 3 hours to do it by hand. Literally is 5-10 minutes of to have Claude do it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where you try and get people to the point where they're saving. It's real and measurable, but it's not overwhelming to them, and they're saving substantive things that they're able to translate into productive gains.
And talk to me a little bit about who your target clients are and what the ICPs look like inside those target clients.
Well, our company Tectonic is a full service digital strategy and transformation company. So we really work the full spectrum, whether it's marketing and branding or help desk and IT support, and we have our Orchestrate platform that's workflow and automation. So we work with the biggest higher education institutions, large companies, 5-figure associations, but we also work with a lot of groups that are extremely small, a handful, the 5 to 10 groups that are kind of doing guerrilla warfare on getting themselves as startups. And so that makes it really interesting for us because every day is different, and we value partnerships. We look for places where we can make an impact, and stay with a group or company over a few years and help them adapt and grow as technology changes. But we do look, as far as ICP, we're looking for groups that, like I said, they've got a vision. They're open to the idea of, hey, your workflow might be broken. They don't show up saying, give us a tool, implement this CRM for us, staple Claude onto what we do. I think when we hear that, then it's probably not a good fit. But we really do love creative problem solving and partnerships. And so that's really, we're looking more for that model and that fit as opposed to any particular size or vertical.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've always been more on that psychographic uh, pliability of the leadership, right? More than anything else.
No, that's a wonderful point, because a lot of our conversations initially with groups are at the leadership level, and we're looking for, you know, these projects are complex and challenging. Are you just trying to get yourself to the finish line, cut the ribbon, and move on to the next thing, or are you looking to really infuse your company's culture and make real change with it? Are you planning to communicate? Do you have champions that you've explained this to? Are you accountable? Do you allow feedback and debate? That leadership level, those are important markers for whether something can be successful or not.
Yeah, and I think that has been one of the painful lessons that we've learned again is that the change management is probably 80% of this deployment cycle. Wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely. I mean, and we see that at a lot of, in higher ed in particular, but also at, sort of at the 501(c)(3) nonprofit level. A lot of them run off grants, and it feels like every year there's a new initiative, and it creates burnout and a lack of trust amongst the staff where they're like, "Oh, well, here's this year's, so and so implementation that we have to do," and everyone does it, and then you wait for the next year and there's another change. And so leaders and sort of managers and directors that really take hold of that, and communicate well about it, sort of promote transparency, put governance in place, and those SOPs that you mentioned, those are the ones that really thrive.
Yeah, it's the really not sexy work of of grinding through the process, right?
It's a yeah no nobody's yeah The operational part of it is so critical, but as you mentioned, it doesn't dazzle anybody. So
Yeah, and talk a little bit about what the tech stack is that you guys are working with and working to implement in some of your projects.
well, we're in the pre-AI days, we kind of modeled ourselves as technology agnostic in a sense. We started off as a Microsoft partner, so everything we built was kind of, .NET and then Core and all of those, and so we have a great deal of proficiency there. But obviously, like other more modern frameworks, whether it's could be anything in terms of building those websites and applications for us. And now being able to turbocharge that with AI to cut down on QC time and sort of do good code review. It's been really fun because it's opened up a lot of possibilities for us. One of the things we do, because we do custom development, because we're in so many different spaces, is we're looking to build things that help integrate with existing systems. Like a university will say, well, this is our student information database, it's homegrown, you have to be able to integrate with that. And that allows us having the expertise to use any tech stack allows us to sort of adapt our solutions to meet the client need.
Yeah, so I think we're seeing the biggest transformation in terms of not having to buy SaaS off the shelf and have custom dev happen. What are you seeing with your clients in the space you're working in?
I see that too. There was definitely a stretch where customization sort of became people were down on it. It was like a bad word. People were like, well, this means more time, this means more money. And maybe the worst, most challenging part was it meant that there was one person or one group that had a vision for what that customization was. And then when they left, like we talked about earlier, people will be like, well, why the heck is this customization in place? But now, I mean, with the advances in AI and how that can be used by engineers, it's a lot easier to quickly implement things so that you don't have these long, I need 20 sprints and, longer QC times, and the ability to roll it back if it doesn't work. You get immediate feedback loops. And so I think that's one of the great benefits from me looking at it from an engineering or development standpoint, is that customization is now back on the table because people have more flexibility and speed in order to do it.
And do you think that Claude Code and Claude Cowork is helping that customization happen?
I do. It's we use that. We use Codex. We use a lot of different ones. We always, as I said, the bleeding edge, it's hard to keep up with everything, but I do think it's definitely sped things up. It allows project managers, account managers, and strategists to play a role that they never did before. They weren't technical project managers, but now they can better imagine, visualize, and show engineers the flow and what they want to do. And the developers themselves, I mean, you still need to have their judgment, obviously, and oversight for everything. But being able to manage agentic tools that way has given them, license to do things much faster. It's not, can you estimate this and then spend a month building it so that we can then see the prototype? They're prototyping in a matter of, days, hours, things like that.
Yeah, I think that is probably, like, for the nerd in me loves that the most, where I can just prototype either inside of a tool like Replit or Lovable, or build, if it's something a little more complicated, then go into Codex and build something there. And then once I get it as far as I can go, then I could give it to the dev team to do the real work.
Right. I do know that can be, there's always a little sheepish, like, hey, I've built this all the way to 80. I think it's 80%. Surely you can just clean this up. And they're like, no. We got to tear down some of this junk that you've done, Mike, and and fix it back up.
Yeah, I have no fantasy about that. I always say, here's my wireframe, here's the features and benefits I was working to create, and you guys are the smart ones. I'm just the marketing guy.
I always say that to any of our clients. They're like, oh, well, you're going to do this great thing, and I'm like, no, there are wizards that are going to do the great things. I'm just here to help translate it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's good. So tell me a little bit about what's your personal tech stack. How are you staying ahead of everything in your work?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Claude Cowork. That's been invaluable in terms of trying to go through. We we have such a broad base of clients that span a lot of industries, and trying to keep track of everything with the clients, everything with our projects overall, with our internal initiatives, and just overall strategic posture. Creating tasks and workflows and automating some of those things that I mentioned earlier, responses to people, or just setting things up in order to do outreach. I've saved so much time that way, and so it's been nice. I do a lot of our legal strategy and document review as well, and so having that to have Claude and OpenAI and stuff, sort of pit against each other to do co-review has been nice too. So
yeah, that's good stuff. Well, Mike, I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much for coming on, talking about what you're doing at Tectonic. If people want to reach out to you and have a strategy conversation, how do they do that?
Go to our website, teamtectonic.com. There's a nice form with lots of different options. You can also track me down on LinkedIn. I think there's only one or two Mike Toguchis floating around there. And so even if you just want to chat about a business problem you've run into, it doesn't have to be sort of a customer situation. If you just want to talk through something, find me, message me. I'd love to hear the problems that people are encountering, and maybe hopefully point you in the right direction.
All right, Mike. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. It's been great.
All right.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emmanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.